Hi everyone, Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing here, and welcome to the Author Journey. Today I have a very special guest who's coming to us from Nova Scotia, other parts of Nova Scotia, and we'll let him talk a little bit about that when I bring him up. But Dr. Matthew Anderson grew up on Treaty 4 territory in southwest Saskatchewan. After living many years in Montreal and teaching at Concordia, he now holds a Gatto Chair of Christian Studies at St. Francis Xavier University, fondly known as St. FX to those of us in the know. And it's in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, Mi'kma'ki. Matthew is married to Dr. Sarah Parks, a professor at St. FX. He has 3 grown children and 1 grandchild. In addition to his academic work, as well as a number of award-winning short stories, Matthew has 4 books in print. The Good Walk, Creating New Paths on Traditional Prairie Trails, University of Regina Press, 2024. Prophets of Love, An Unlikely Kinship of Leonard, Cohen, and the Apostle Paul, McGill-Queens University Press, 2023. Our Home in Treaty Land, Revised and Expanded Edition, written with Dr. Ray Aldred, I hope I pronounced that right, 2024, and recently expanded and relaunched. And Pairings, The Bible and Booze, Novalis 2021, which was also translated into French. And a 5th book, Someone Else's Saint, How a Scottish Pilgrimage Led to Nova Scotia, that comes out with Pottersfield Press in April of 2025. But I did notice it is available for pre-order now. Matthew produces the Pilgrimage podcast, Pilgrimage Stories from Up and Down the Staircase, and has produced 2 documentary films. So there's lots to unpack today as we welcome our guest, Dr. Matthew Anderson, to the Author Journey.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, Matthew. Welcome.
Nice
I'm very
to be here.
excited to have you here. We met about a year ago now at the Fantastic Grown Up Book Fair.
That's right, a snowy day in Truro.
It was a snowy day in Truro, and I so enjoyed our conversation at the time, and I bought 2 books for my nephew for Christmas, and then I jotted down, oh my goodness, love to have this fellow on the Author Journey, and then things get busy, and snowball rolls and all that, and then I was looking a couple weeks ago at my potential guest, and I'm like, oh, it's time. So welcome.
Thank you. It's really good to be here. It's lovely to have a conversation with you.
Oh, it's so nice to have you. And we talked about all of the books that have come out. You've been very busy.
I have been, and it's kind of odd that I think I'm going to say right off the top that I'm speaking to you from Antigonish, as you said, and from the North Shore and from Mi'kma'ki. It's important to underline that the unceded territory, meaning the sovereign territory of the Mi'kmaq, and in this area from Bugnageek First Nation, which is actually not far from where I live. But I'm also speaking to you from the hospital, as it turns out. I was thinking I was going to make it either home or to the university for this, but I didn't. And so I'm speaking to you from St. Martha's Hospital, a regional hospital in Antigonish, because I had a major stroke in the middle of September. Yikes. And I've been here since. Basically, it's 3 months, 12 weeks, and I am due to be discharged a week from now. So it's almost time. Yep.
Wow. Well, I'm very, very happy that they're taking good care of you, and your recovery is coming along. And boy, oh boy, I admire your determination to join us regardless. And I really appreciate that. And thank you. And congratulations.
Thank you. If I happen to slur my S's, that's one of the signs really of the stroke, is that in terms of the speech, is that my S's are not as sharp as they were. And so if you find that it slurs a little bit, just understand that I'm here in Antigonish in the hospital, and that's why the S's aren't quite as sharp as they could be.
Well, you're coming across loud and clear, so
great.
I appreciate that. But this determination of yours has led to, as I said in the intro, the publication of 4 books and another one coming, and lots of short stories. You were recently a runner-up in the 2024 Nova Writes competition, I understand. I did a little digging.
Yeah, you know what? I was so pleased to be able to enter that, and then to be recognized by being the runner-up for the short story competition, because All of the books that you mentioned so kindly in that introduction are nonfiction. And yet when I think of myself as a writer, I actually think of myself as a fiction writer.
Mhm.
But all of my books are nonfiction. I did start off with short stories and have published quite a number, maybe 7 or 8, many of which have won something or other, various prizes, especially in Quebec where I was living at the time.
Mhm.
Um, and so I was very, very pleased to be able to enter that and then have A Life in Its Pieces is the name of the short story, which was
Mhm.
recognized then by the Nova Scotia Writers Federation in that Nova Prize. So I'm really, really pleased because that's, there's a big part of my heart that's in fiction writing, and
Mhm.
so I'm really pleased. Yeah,
And that's, you know what? And again, shout out to WFNS, because those are the types of things that really encourage writers. Like, what does that do for you
absolutely.
as a writer to get that kind of recognition?
Yeah, it keeps you going. Well,
Mhm.
it was a writing competition that first got me saying I can write these short stories. I can write,
Mhm.
and it was this the Writers Federation of Nova Scotia prize that has reaffirmed for me that a big part of my heart is still in fiction, and I need to
Mhm.
remember to keep working on that.
Okay, well, we'll watch for those fiction books that are going to come out. But in the meantime, let's dive into some of the writings that you've been doing. And as I said, you're a chair of Christian Studies at St. FX. So you've done a lot of work, sort of in the world of academia. What is your PhD in specifically?
So my PhD, you notice I put my glasses on for this part. Uh, my PhD is in religious studies from McGill University. And
Mhm.
people will say to me, in fact, I had somebody here on the nurse's aide come in yesterday and say, so you must be very, very religious. Well, as a matter of fact, I mean, I am a religious person, but you don't have to be to study religious studies. It's
Mhm.
primarily the kind of work I do in religious studies is history. So
Mhm.
in many ways, I'm a historian. And in the work, in the books, you kind of see that because what I'll be often talking about in the book Pairings, Bible and Booze, I'm often talking about the original literary and historical context of a piece of writing.
Mhm.
So it might be the story of the Garden of Eden, and so the sort of Sumerian or Akkadian antecedents to this idea of ancient royal gardens. So that's not really it's not a spiritual kind of an outlook on it. It's more of a historical. Now that can lead to some understandings which illuminate a text or something, but it's historical. So yeah, my research, a big part of these nonfiction books is popularizing my research, whether it's Pairings, The Bible and Booze, or Leonard
There it
Cohen
is.
and Paul. All
Yeah,
look at
so I
it.
was just looking at the covers as you were chatting,
Yeah,
Pairings, Bible, and Booze. So a very nice segue to talking about the prophets of love. I did start reading a little bit about that of that book and the comparison between Leonard Cohen and the Apostle Paul. And the most important question is, well, it's not a question, it's a comment of, oh my gosh, you have some of Leonard Cohen's furniture.
well, as both my wife Sarah Parks and Miokio, who is a Buddhist abbot in Montreal, who may well be on this call, I'm not sure, or on the live stream. Um, anyway, as both of them like to point out, it's furniture from Leonard Cohen's house. Does that make it Leonard Cohen's furniture? Well, I like to push that point a little bit for the sake of the book. But we know for a fact that the Zen Center's dog slept on that bed. But did Leonard Cohen ever lay his head down on it? We're not sure, or I'm
Oh,
not
I
sure
love.
anyway. So
Oh, that you'll never let that go, right?
no, 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 no. In
Never
fact,
ever.
no. Well, the we have the chair and the glass-topped coffee
Coffee
table in our
table.
living room, and I just love it.
Oh,
And
we'll
in
need to see
fact,
a picture of that at some point.
oh yes, 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 yes.
I
Um,
thought that was really cool.
yeah.
And just shout out to those folks who are watching. Jan Jorgensen has said, so wonderful to see and hear you, Matthew and
Oh,
Annalise.
yeah.
Thank you for
I love
joining us.
Jan. And Jan sponsors literary evenings in Montreal, and I was privileged to be part of one in June.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, called the Armchair Soiree. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So talk a
Or the
little bit
Lawn Chair Soiree.
about why you honed in on those two individuals, Leonard Cohen and the Apostle Paul, or the Prophet Paul, rather.
Yeah.
To
Uh,
and talk about a mashup. Just give us a
Yeah.
little insight into that book.
Well, I mean, I studied Paul in my doctoral thesis was on Paul and on the sort of historical setting for Paul. And at some point, I think what happened was that I sort of live with Paul in my head because I'm always working on papers about Paul. And so he inhabits a fair bit of real estate in my head all the time. And I was thinking about Paul, and then I listened to Leonard Cohen, and I love Leonard Cohen, and I mean, especially the later Cohen. I mean, he's not without problems. I want to say that right off the top. I mean, there's all kinds of issues, misogynistic and the Me Too movement and so on. So he was no saint, but his lyrics, especially the older Cohen, who's coming to grips with his life and facing his mortality, amazing lyrics. So I'm listening to Cohen, and as I said, Paul's always in my head. And at some point, there was something about Hallelujah, the song Hallelujah, which everybody
I sure do.
And there was maybe a Roman Catholic priest I saw on YouTube or something who had rewritten words and sung them to somebody, and they were very Christian words. And somebody said something about Leonard Cohen and Christianity, and I went, well, of course he's Jewish. The man's Jewish. Yeah, and then I thought, wait a minute, that's the exact same point I'm always trying to make with Paul.
Right.
Because especially Christians assume that, Paul is sort of one of us. He's one of us and was a convert to Christianity. Well, you can't be a convert to something that didn't exist yet. And so Paul was a lot like Leonard Cohen in the sense that his work could be taken by many, many people. And in fact, of course, it formed part of the basis of Christianity. But it was ultimately all from the Jewish roots that he drew so much of what he talked about. And Cohen does the same. People don't realize how absolutely Jewish Cohen was, and that he was writing. In some ways, he was trying near the end of his life to write almost like psalms for singing, for worship in synagogue. Anyway, and they're both scoundrels a little bit, which makes it fun.
Right.
And,
Well, I honed in on one of the comments that you made, and there's hope for the world when Leonard Cohen finally grew into the empath he pretended to be.
yes.
I just love that line, right?
Yeah, and I think he did. I mean, I never met Cohen personally, but I have known several people who met him, and especially the women who met him in his sort of midlife were not always impressed with him. But I think that what happened was that he became finally that empath and that elder statesman who, that he always was marketed as. Sometimes we grow into the things that we're supposed to be, and I think Cohen took a long time to do that, and maybe Paul did too, although Paul's life was and career was much shorter in many ways. And
some of us are still waiting.
Yeah. Well,
and shout out Miokio has joined us. Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Zen Abbott from Montreal. Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yes, a wonderful person. I'm very happy to have you here, Miokio, with us.
Well, and like I said, there's so much to unpack here. And one of the terms that I came across and that you alluded to just a minute ago is suppressionism, which I find fascinating and I want to learn more about. So talk a little bit about that, sort of give us an idea of what that means.
It was one of the things I was trying to you see, a part of a lot of my books, including some of the stuff that I've co-written with Indigenous authors like Ray Aldred. A lot of it is trying to not only make research accessible to lots of people, but also I've always had a kind of a social justice angle or a justice angle. And in terms of Leonard Cohen and Paul, Prophets of Love, it's that there is a kind of a casual supersessionism that a lot of Christians practice, and well-meaning people who would never, who might never ever would never say anything rude to somebody whom they know is Jewish or something. Would never ever say something like that, but who kind of still somehow hold to this, unconscious or consciously, to this idea that Christians have replaced, basically, supersession is the idea that Christians have replaced Jews as God's favorite people. That's kind of it. Like, favorite child has turned from being Jewish to being Christian. And it's usually based on this idea that something was wrong with Judaism and is wrong with Judaism, essentially. And when you read Paul, when you read him carefully, a lot of people who actually think this haven't read very carefully. And so, I've devoted a lot of my adult life to studying these texts. And when you read them, you realize that Paul never ever says that there was anything wrong with Judaism. In fact, he's very proud of it. What he says is kind of the gates are open, more people can come in to this arrangement, and you come in on your own terms. And so he was happy to have non-Jews, Gentiles, come in, turn to this God of the Jews, and but do it as themselves. He was against circumcision, and the reason for it was that he felt that people should keep their own identity, while they were also doing this. So, and in Prophets of Love, I mean, it was a little bit like Leonard Cohen in his concerts. He sort of didn't say, well, you have to all do what I'm doing. He laid out a spirituality and invited people in, and made it welcoming. It was kind of a big tent spirituality, and that's what Cohen did so well in his writings and in his poetry, which is vague enough sometimes to be able to kind of bring you in. You feel your life is experienced in Cohen's words, and I wanted to express that in the book. I really wanted.
And we need more of that, don't we?
Absolutely. In this world, we absolutely need it.
And you've kind of your mission has been to explore and present some of the cross philosophies. And truly, when you do, like you said, you have done a lot of study of Indigenous culture, and have co-written these books. And one that
that's Our
we
Home and Treaty
mentioned is
Land,
Our Home and Treaty Land, co-written.
Isn't that a beautiful cover?
I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And you talk about it as a journey of identity and place and restoring right relations. What does that mean?
Well,
I know that's kind of a big question, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a parent, and when my kids are, of course, grown, and I have a grandchild now in England. But when they were young, I remember that if you were trying to restore right relations, you didn't say, "Now we're going to restore right relations." What you do is that you get your kids together, you correct whatever's been done wrong, and somebody, you need to learn to reestablish. It's all about relationality, but always within the framework of knowing you're part of a family together. And one of the great things that Ray Aldred did in this book, and by the way, it's his daughter, Kat, who drew that moose for the cover.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, she has an online art. She sells these as cards, not only this drawing, but many others like it. And it's Kat Aldred, Aldred, and I believe that the website is called Posis, Posis, or it might be Poesis. Anyway, Ray, one of the things he says is that we are in relationship on this land. And so the main thing I've learned a ton of things from Ray and from folks out west, especially Richard Kotowich of blessed memory now, whom I walked with, Louise Saff, who was the poet laureate of Canada. And in fact, she sent me a message yesterday encouraging me in the hospital, and from others. Is the importance of land. And it's not so much that I've learned this, but I've kind of imbibed it from them, in the way that you do when you hang out with people who have great things to teach you. Sometimes you just take it in, and that's how fortunate I've been to be with some of these folk. And
just a note, Ray is Cree, correct?
Yes, that's right. He's Cree Nahiyel, and he teaches in Vancouver at the Vancouver School of Theology. So we wrote alternating chapters of Our Home and Treaty Land, and in fact, for this version of it, 2024 version, he added a chapter, a really important chapter. I find that really brings the book together. And so what we talk about there is the idea of that we are. Those of us who are non-Indigenous, like myself, are in this land because of treaty. And now the treaties might be very expressly made, like the number of treaties out west, or they might be tacit treaties, like the double row wampum, or they might be treaties like the peace and friendship treaties here in Mi'kma'ki. But there was always some understanding that you are allowed to come and share this place. And we share it, pardon me, on condition that you understand that this is land to be shared. And of course, as soon as there's a resource extraction and you're pushed off of the Indigenous folk are pushed off of the land that is theirs, that's no longer sharing. I mean, if that were behavior amongst my children, you would say, okay, that's not proper behavior at all. And that's what Canadians have been guilty of again and again through our governments. Most of us wouldn't necessarily feel that way. or think we wouldn't act that way, but we continue to support governments and police who in fact enact those kind of policies. So our home and treaty land is spiritual, and it's based on land. It's very practical too.
And it just came out this year, or the re-release was this year?
The re-release came out this year. Yeah, the original publisher went out of business, and Ray and I were kind of stuck, and so we wound up republishing this year. But it gave us a chance to clean up the edition, and to come out with a beautiful cover, and to add a chapter as well. A lot of those themes, by the way, are also in the Good Walk. The themes about the importance of land.
Okay, so talk a little bit about the Good Walk.
Oh. I was so happy. The Good Walk was just featured in the Winnipeg Free Press last Saturday. The only
excellent
newspaper left, I think, with a book section, an official book section, and they Canadian, I should say, and they highlighted it as one of the nonfiction books, highlighted books of 2024. So I was so pleased with that, and that's me on the lower left. There are 6 figures in there, and that's me on the lower left, back when I could walk like that, and I hope to be able to walk like that again soon.
And that came out, wait a minute, I did say it earlier, the Good Walk was again this year, right?
This year, yeah.
You've been busy.
Yeah, that's right. Came out in April. And I'm so pleased with with this book, because what it is, it highlights 2 walks in particular, 2 350-kilometer walks that I took with a group of people. They weren't sort of heroic journeys. They were community walks, relational walks.
Okay.
And we walked traditional trails. So these were Indigenous trails, Métis Trading Road, the first one. And the second one was a traditional trail, but also a settler trail, and happened to be one of the trails followed by the Canadian militia that put down the Riel Rebellion in 1885. And we walked these trails in 2015 and 2017. And as a mixed group with some Indigenous presence, we learned what it meant to sort of walk together and to begin each day with a smudge, for instance. And then we were walking on territory that was had intentionally been cleared of its Indigenous inhabitants by Canadian government policy in the late, not that long ago, 125 years ago. And for me, since I'm from that land, part of it was realizing that my grandparents arrived about 50 years later in land that they thought of as empty, but it wasn't empty, it was cleared, and that's quite a difference. And by walking, so this is the story of these walks, but it's also the story of that clearing, and the story of ongoing debates about sovereignty, about Indigenous sovereignty, and what we who are not Indigenous can do to recognize that. So it's a lovely book, I think, and U of R, University of Regina Press, did a great job with it.
And you walked with non-Indigenous and Indigenous people.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a majority non-Indigenous, and that helped us. For instance, in 2017, we were walking through areas that were posted in many cases no trespassing, and we met a little bit of resistance sometimes. But the people who were walking with us who were Indigenous said, we wouldn't do what you're doing right now, which was sort of just set up a picnic on the side of the road and do that. And they said it wouldn't be safe for us. And we realized that it was true, that because we were a majority non-Indigenous group, we could behave on the land in a way that others couldn't, and that was part of our learning.
Right, and part of your, talk about your motivation or mission in writing these books.
Yeah, so part of it is to explain that. I mean, I will say that The Good Walk is also intensely personal, because I wrote it right during the period of time when my parents were dying. So I was flying out at that time, maybe in one time, I think I flew out 8 times in 1 year.
Wow.
So I was flying out, but at the same time as I was flying out, I was driving across this land, and I was trying to make sense of, why is our family rooted in this particular place? And part of then I was able to explore that through the walks. There was a funeral. Basically, it was like 350 kilometer walks sandwiched between funerals, and sort of part of the decompressing of what it is to lose one's parents and realize, okay, now where are we and why are we here in this place?
Yeah.
So it's important. It was important for that, but it was also more broadly important, I think, for talking about what do we as Canadians, what's part of our identity. I
Mhm.
mean, given the comments today from Donald Trump, President Trump, I mean,
Oh,
I
I didn't
think
hear.
to try and think what does it mean to be Canadian is as important as ever.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so those
absolutely.
books are about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And being a
Yeah.
historian,
Yeah.
we hope and pray that we can learn from history,
That's right. Yeah.
and maybe not make the same mistakes
Yeah. That's
twice.
right. Yeah.
But you have another book that's coming out soon in April, and this one, let's have a quick look. Someone Else's Saint, which is a Pottersfield Press. So shout out to Pottersfield Press and
Yes.
Leslie
Wonderful
at the
local
Leslie
press.
Choice out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about this one, the
Well,
Scottish Pilgrimage.
yeah, it's not unrelated to what I was just saying about the Good
Okay.
Walk, because firstly, it's about walk, it's about pilgrimage, but it's
Mhm.
also about paying attention to the land where you are. Now, so for
Mhm.
me, as soon as Sarah, Dr. Sarah Parks, my spouse, and I arrived in Pumpkett, I'm proudly wearing a Pumpkett 250.
Oh, can't
Uh,
see it.
oh, okay, well, I'm wearing a T-shirt that says Pumpkett 250 year anniversary. And part of being here for me has been trying to learn something about where I am. And
Mhm.
one of the best ways to learn about where you are is to walk, whether that's an urban environment or a rural environment. And
Mhm.
Someone Else's Saint is the story of, well, there's a bit of a strange thing that happened, a coincidence. What happened in 2019 when Sarah and I were living in England, I walked with friends, close friends from out west, Christine Ramsey and Ken Wilson. We walked the Whithorn Way from south from in Scotland, basically to Whithorn on the southwest tip of Scotland. So a fairly
Wow.
long walk, and a miserably wet walk, frankly, in 2019. But we saw a lot of very interesting territory, and we walked to the shrine of Saint Ninian. So I
Wow.
was very familiar with Saint Ninian and had done some research on Saint Ninian. And so I was thinking, who is this Saint Ninian? And then when we were about to move to Nova Scotia, to Saint FX and Antigonish, we were looking at the town map of Antigonish and the cathedral. We thought, oh, there's a Roman Catholic cathedral. And guess what it's called? Saint
Saint
Ninian's.
Ninian.
Yes. And so we're looking at Saint Ninian Cathedral and we're going, now, why would it be called that? So there's a mystery. And it's not obvious what it is, what the reason is that
Okay.
it's called
Well,
Saint
no
Ninian.
spoilers. You got
No,
to
no,
pick
I
up the
won't give it
book.
away.
Yeah,
No.
but I can see it is available for pre-order right now. So folks
Yeah,
who are watching and want to grab a copy of Someone Else's Saint to be mailed to you on
that's right.
launch time in April. It looks like a great book, and actually, I'm planning a trip to Scotland for the fall, so I'll
Okay,
have
well, there
to
you
to
are.
pick your brain. And you were saying when we were backstage that you had lived in Ireland for a couple of years, so you've
Yeah,
been
that's
all
right.
over.
We lived in Ireland actually for a year in Dublin and did a
Hmm.
lot of walking there too. I mean, not enough maybe to write a book about it, but I certainly there are going to be some podcasts on my pilgrimage podcast about the walks I took in Ireland. It was
Excellent.
beautiful, beautiful land for pilgrimage, and of course, lots of Irish pilgrimage.
Absolutely. Well, and let's just remind folks how they can find you. If you want to learn more about Dr. Anderson, Matthew, somethinggrand.ca and unsettledwords.com.
Thank you.
And
Can
is
I
there,
just shout out to the podcast as well?
yes,
So
absolutely.
yeah, so it's called Pilgrimage Stories from Up and Down the Staircase. So wherever you get
Mhm.
your podcasts, Pilgrimage Stories from Up and Down the Staircase. Because during the lockdown in England, in the early days of the pandemic, I walked up and down the staircase thinking about the walks that we were doing.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, and
Yeah,
actually, we can pop that if there's a link to that in the comments after we wrap up.
great.
And the best place for people to purchase your books, I imagine they're on Amazon and
Well,
local
from a local
bookstores.
bookstore
Hmm.
is always great. Get them to order it in.
Hmm.
Or I know that right now, McGill-Queens is offering 30% off their Prophets of Love, Leonard Cohen
Oh,
and the Apostle Paul, with a code.
excellent.
So if you go on their website and look for the code, there's a 30% off.
Okay, and that's at Queen's University?
That's McGill-Queens University Press.
McGill-Queens, okay,
Yeah.
McGill-Queens University Press,
Yeah, that's
okay.
absolutely
How's
it.
that? That's a tongue
It is. It
twister.
is a bit funny. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share before we sign off for
Well,
today? I can't believe.
well, I mean, thanks for giving me the chance to talk about this. I guess I would just say that the looking at where do you live and what's going on in that land, and relationality of land. That's really what a lot of these books are about, and it's been such a gift in my life, and it still is right here. I mean, that's what this book coming out next spring is about, is what's going on in this land right now, Antigonish, and I had the chance to walk with 15 intrepid walkers. In September, we walked from Palmkit Beach, close by where I live, 23 kilometers to St. Ninian Cathedral.
Wow.
The day before I had my stroke. It's not related. I want to say
Wow.
it's not related. And then I had my stroke the next day, and Sarah teases me that I'm the only person probably who sent in a manuscript for a book from emergency, because what happened was that I had a very light stroke at first, and I was in emergency kind of bored. And so I just finished off things and sent in that manuscript. So I learned something about the land by walking it. And maybe some of the people on this call right now are the ones, or on this live stream, are folk who walked with me in September. And if so, a shout out to them, because they were intrepid walkers too.
That's fabulous. And you know what? It's a tribute to your passion for the work you're doing and the messages that you're getting out. And I really admire you and appreciate you for coming and sharing that message. And for those of you who want more of Matthew, he's still teaching at St. FX. And I understand that you might be coming our way to Halifax to do some work at the Atlantic School of Theology as well, maybe?
Well, there's a chance. They sent me an email inviting me maybe to come and teach about Leonard, Cohen, and St. Paul sometime next spring. So I might be doing that. Yep.
Okay. So is there somewhere that people can, follow you, or is it best just to go back to your website? And
I think on the website, or there is a Facebook group dedicated to pilgrimage stories up and down the staircase, and so either that or the website, especially somethinggrand.ca.
Okay, somethinggrand.ca. Well, that's fantastic. And we're out of time for today. And so maybe we'll get you back when someone else's saint comes out.
Oh, I'd love that. Thank you.
Continue the conversation. And please continue in your upward recovery, and good health to you and your family, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And I can't believe there was still I had 10 more questions, but we'll save them for now.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's lovely chatting with you. You're so easy to chat with. I appreciate it.
And you are as well. And I appreciate your time. So we'll see you hopefully soon.
All right.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. And thank you all for joining us on the author journey this week. I'm Ann O'Connell. And for now, I'll say goodbye. Happy reading and happy writing. And we'll see you next time on the author journey.